Okay, we'll get started. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Kwan. I'm the NDP candidate for Vancouver East, and I'm so delighted to be here with our leader, Jagmeet Singh, to which I will have a little bit more to say momentarily. But let me first off say thank you to all of you, the media, for taking time to join with us today at this media press conference. I also wish to just take a moment to acknowledge the First Peoples, the Indigenous peoples, for allowing us to be on their unceded Coast Salish territories and for us to live, to work, to play on their territories. I want to take a moment to introduce our fantastic team of candidates that are here today with us. And now, of course, these are not all of our candidates, but we have some of them joining us today, and I'm so excited to introduce them, and even more excited to see them in the House of Commons, fighting for people in Ottawa. So in no particular order, I'm going to introduce our candidates. So let me first start with Peter Julian. Is our fantastic candidate for New Westminster Burnaby. We have Jim Hansen for Burnaby North Seymour sitting over here. We have Bonita Zarello for Port Moody Coquitlam sitting right there. Coming back to this side, we have Jin Liu from South Surrey White Rock. And then we have Sandra Nixon, who is over there, Richmond Centre. Jack Travato from Steveston, Richmond East. Last but not least, Michael Chang from Langley Aldergrove. Woohoo for our candidates. Yes. All right, so now, without further ado, I'd like to really say a few words about a man that does not need any introduction. You all know him. He's been crisscrossing across the country, not just during the campaign, but all the way through the minute he became the leader of the NDP. He's traveled across the country, speaking to Canadians from coast to coast to coast, listening to what Canadians have to say, understanding their issues, and then bringing their voice to the House of Commons and in the community, amplifying their concerns and fighting for change. We absolutely believe that better is possible, and Jagmeet has led that fight every step of the way. I am so excited to be sitting here with our leader, Jagmeet Singh, who is going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Jagmeet Singh.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm really excited. As you can tell, Jenny has an incredibly powerful voice, both literally and metaphorically. She is someone who fights hard for the people of Vancouver, of the downtown east side, of Chinatown. She has been an incredible advocate. So honored to have someone like Jenny on the team, a trailblazer in her own right, and we're so thankful to have you on our team, Jenny. You're amazing. And I also want to give a big shout out to our incredible candidates. Thank you. Every one of you has made a difference in your communities already. I'm so honored to have you all on the team. You're amazing. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge that it's always important to acknowledge the Indigenous territories that we're gathered on, just as a reminder of how our commitment to fight for justice for the First People of this land. And with that, I want to talk about some of the top issues that have come up in the pandemic and things that we're concerned about that speak directly to many different communities, but particularly to the Asian community. I want to speak about this pandemic, how tough it's been, how hard it's been on so many people, and how people were worried about losing their jobs, and people lost work, and people had to shut down their businesses. It's been tough. And I want you to know throughout this pandemic, we've been thinking about you and we've been fighting for you. When people needed help, we were able to fight to bring in CERB and then to double it from what the Liberals wanted to start at 1,000. We doubled it to 2,000, helping so many people. Millions of Canadians have the ability to put food on the table and pay their bills. We helped people keep their jobs. When jobs were at risk, we were able to increase the wage subsidy, which the Liberals started at 10%, increased it to 75%. We brought in paid sick leave to keep people at home when they were sick, and we brought in help for students. And we know there are a number of other issues, though, that are still impacting the community. We've seen really sadly in this difficult time a rise of anti-Asian hate. And I think about one of my constituents, one of the people that lives in Burnaby South, and how she told me a story about her mom and how her mom would walk every evening, go for an evening stroll. And she told me that she called her mom and said, "Mom, don't go for that evening walk anymore. I'm worried about your safety." No daughter should have to call her mom to tell her, don't go for that evening walk because of the rise of hatred against someone just because of where they come from or what they look like. But this is a reality. And we want to tackle the rise of anti-Asian hate, one, by denouncing it, but two, by putting some resources behind it. Right now, when someone gets assaulted or threatened and it's based on hate, it's most often not prosecuted as a hate crime. And we want to specifically name that when a hate crime happens, it has to be identified as one and prosecuted as one. We know there's not enough resources in police departments to particularly investigate hate crimes, and that has to change. And we need to tackle the online hate, which propagates misinformation, which is designed to inflame hatred against people for who they are. And those are some important steps that we can take. We've known about this for a long time, and we've seen Justin Trudeau make comments and statements about it, but he has yet to do anything concrete to tackle any of the root causes of this hatred. And we are going to be different. We're going to make this a priority. We know that people need to feel safe in their communities, need to feel safe in who they are, and we're going to fight for that. We've talked a lot about the housing crisis, and a lot of people tell me they are worried for their kids. People who have homes are worried that their kids will never be able to afford a home. They're also worried that their kids can't find a home in their communities. And if they can't find a home where they grow up and where they've got family and friends and a job, they often look to leaving their communities. And this is something that's a serious problem in the Lower Mainland. It's impacting many communities, and many people are worried about the future of their kids and where they're going to end up moving to because they can't afford to stay where they've grown up and where they've got friends and family and connections. There are a number of very specific issues, and one thing I want to give a big shout out to Jenny Kwan, who's been a long and strong advocate fighting for the Chinatown development and support and investments. We've seen that this is a historic community, a historic and an important part of the Lower Mainland of Vancouver, yet it continues to be ignored and neglected. And the federal Liberals have long ignored the importance of this community and the historic significance. We also want to make sure that the investments make this community into a tourist attraction, somewhere where people want to visit to see the rich history of Asian Canadians, of people of Chinese descent, and their contributions. So this is something that we deeply care about. We know that there are ongoing struggles, particularly in the Lower East Side with the opioid crisis, and it's heartbreaking to see how this crisis is ravaging our community. And we've known for the past number of years that to keep people safe, to keep the individuals safe, and to keep our community safe, the current approach is simply not working. The approach of previous Liberal and Conservative governments has not worked. So we can't continue to do the same thing that doesn't work. We need to look at this with a different approach to keep people safe, to keep our community safe. Let's respond to this crisis as a healthcare crisis with compassion and care and services that will deal with the problems instead of continuing that same cycle that doesn't make things better. And so we're committed to that as well. I want you to know you can count on us, whether it's for housing, whether it's for creating good jobs, whether it's to invest in our healthcare system. You can count on New Democrats to fight for you because that is what we've done in this pandemic. That is what we've always done, and that's what we will do moving forward. I'll leave you with one last thing. Can we afford another 4 years of Justin Trudeau, who's allowed for the housing crisis to get worse, the climate crisis to get worse, and continues to allow billionaires to have a free ride? We believe that billionaires should start paying their fair share so we can invest in you and your families, in the solutions that you need, in the healthcare and the housing and the commitments to making your life better. That's what we're about. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jagmeet. We're now going to go to the segment where we open up the floor to you, to the media, where you can ask questions of our leader. And you see there's a mic over there, so I will point you to the mic. And if you can go up to the mic, identify yourself, your name and your outlet, and then please ask your question.
My name is Todd. I'm from Fairchild TV. Jagmeet, I just want to ask you, this morning you have announcements regarding the flippers. Can you let us know what it will work? Because, you know, flipping not a very bad thing sometimes. Some people, if they're just run away to their home, maybe it's not a negative thing. But if they use that as a business, probably that's a problem. So please give us the answer.
You've actually said exactly the issue. You nailed it perfectly. Our concern is not with people that buy a home, live in their home, raise a family, and then want to move on and sell it. Our concern is people who are using the housing market like a stock market. They're using it to make money. And in doing so, they are making it harder for everyone else to find a home to call their own. I spoke with some young folks earlier today that were just telling me about their worries about the future. And they were saying to me, we literally want to stay in this community. They want to stay in Burnaby, but they can't because they can't afford to. And this is something that I hear everywhere I go. Even when I go door knocking and I meet with parents and they say, we want to tackle this issue. And I notice that they've got a home. They say, oh, no, not for us, but we're worried about our kids. They're not going to be able to afford. So we want to get the big money out of housing. And to do that, what happened about 20 years ago, the Liberals changed the capital gains tax. And since then, in the past 20 years, we've seen that things have become worse and worse. So what we want to do is we want to discourage using the housing market like a stock market by bringing back the capital gains tax to where it was back in 2000. And that's one tool to help us get some of the big money out of housing. We also don't want a young person, a young professional, a family to have to compete with a large corporation that's trying to buy homes as a way to make profit. So we're going to implement a national foreign buyers tax to discourage using our housing market just as profits. It should be for people to live. And so those are some of our steps. We also want to tackle money laundering, something that is a very big concern here in BC. And it's actually something that the federal government is in the best position to tackle because it requires having national coordination and using our resources to assess where the risks are and then to see if money is being moved from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We need to properly fund and tackle the money laundering and criminal activity, which is also driving up the cost of housing. And finally, we want to build and invest in building more units, more homes that are affordable, that are in your budget. So 500,000 new homes that are cooperative housing or not-for-profit, or homes that are simply affordable so you can actually find a place to call your own. That's what we want to do.
Thank you very much on that important question around housing. Just to remind everyone as well, it was the federal Liberals back in 1993 who canceled the National Affordable Housing Program. As a result, Canada lost more than 500,000 units of affordable housing. And of course, to no surprise, as Jagmeet had mentioned, now with the capital gains tax, the benefit for people who's turning a profit and without paying their fair share of taxes. So these are issues that are top of mind for Canadians, and it must change. So better is possible. Any other questions from the media? If you will please come up to the mic. Please identify yourself.
Hi, Mr. Singh. My name is Lucy, and I'm from Omni News. I just want to know your view on the Canada-China relationship right now, and what will you do for that part if you get elected, and maybe some comments on the Huawei CFO Mo Wanzhou's case right now. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Canada has historically had a strong relationship with China. It's something that's important, but right now our relationship is strained, and we are deeply concerned about what's going on with Mr. Spavor and Mr. Kovrig. These are two Canadians who have gone through serious violations of their human rights, and right now we're very concerned about their safety. They've been in custody now for almost 1,000 days. This is very concerning to us. That's something that we're going to continue to work on. We're going to continue to encourage an approach where we work with our allies to apply pressure to secure the release of our Canadian citizens, of our folks that have been away from their families and in horrible conditions for so long. With respect to the Huawei CFO, our position has been that we need to make sure we're following the rule of law and make sure that we are making decisions that are in line with our values and our jurisprudence, and make sure that's the principle that we follow.
All right. Thank you. Again, to the media, if you have questions for our leader, Jagmeet Singh, please come up to the mic and feel free to ask your question. Please identify yourself. Don't be shy. Go ahead, Todd.
This morning, Justin Trudeau just announced that $6.5 billion for mental health. Do you think that can solve the problem right now?
It's really interesting. Every time I get a question around Justin Trudeau, I think about his promises in the past. He's promised a lot of things. And I'm not concerned about what he promises. I'm concerned about what he delivers. That's really the big concern, because he promised pharmacare in 2019, something that would have helped a lot of families. We know that the cost of medication is very high. Whether you have a plan or don't have a plan, it is very costly, and it's only going up and up every year. And with universal pharmacare, we would help people who have no plan, people who have coverage. It would save, on average, families about $500 a year. And for many families, it would save thousands of dollars, let alone the fact that many people who can't afford their medication can't actually get the care they need and end up in the emergency room because they're not able to stay well. So I'm concerned about the nice words in a campaign and then not delivering on that. But when it comes to mental health, we know that this has been a very tough time for mental health. Mental health services have always been difficult to access, but in this pandemic, when people have been isolated, they felt alone, they felt anxiety and stress and pressure and worries, it's only taken a greater toll on mental health. And so we've long said mental health should be considered a part of our healthcare system. It shouldn't be considered a luxury or something separate. So we want to include mental health into our healthcare system. We are the party that brought healthcare into Canada. We believe in it. We want to defend it. We want to make sure it stays public, and we want to increase and expand healthcare to include mental health services.
Thank you, Todd. Any other questions from the media?
We have another one. We have been heard people complain about like waiting in the emergency room for a long time, especially like during the pandemic, and the doctors are really struggle for working overtime. So in the federal level, anything we can do to improve the emergency room system, maybe? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And your question is something that's on the minds of a lot of people. A lot of people in this pandemic have seen the strain on our healthcare system, on our frontline healthcare workers, on doctors, on nurses. And that strain wasn't created by COVID-19. It was there for a long time. It was just exacerbated or highlighted by the pandemic. And one of the reasons why we're in this position where it is so difficult for healthcare is because for decades and decades, both the Conservatives and the Liberals have been cutting healthcare transfers. They've been cutting the help that people need. And so, one really confusing and troubling example is when Harper was cutting healthcare, Justin Trudeau criticized that, said that's a bad decision, said you shouldn't be cutting healthcare. And then when Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, he kept the exact same cuts of Stephen Harper. And so it shows that Justin Trudeau is contributing to that same problem. We are different. We want to invest in healthcare. We want to make sure that there's a federal partner investing appropriately with the right level of funding so that we can have the healthcare that we know we need and deserve. And we also want to expand it. And so I mentioned medication coverage. We also want to include dental care. There's no reason that someone should not be or should be denied dental care just because they don't have the right job with the right benefits. We believe dental care should be a part of our healthcare system because we know it's connected directly to your overall health. And people who end up struggling with their dental health have problems with their overall health, and there's no help for them. We want to fix that as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jagmeet. Go ahead, Andy.
Andy from Mingpao. On vaccine passport, most provincial jurisdiction has already been looking into having vaccine identification, and I'm just wondering, still there's a lot of communities that are reluctant to take the vaccine. So what's the NDP's position on that?
Certainly. First of all, I want to commend and thank everybody who's gotten vaccinated, who's following the public health measures, and just acknowledge that the majority of Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians, want to take care of each other, want to do whatever we can to keep each other safe. And one of our big reasons why we're encouraging people to get vaccinated is because we're worried about our kids. Children under 12 cannot get vaccinated, so we owe it to them to do our part to keep them safe. And all of us have a collective responsibility to take care of each other. With vaccine passports, what I've been saying, and I think makes a lot of sense, is when we recently traveled to the Atlantic provinces before the election, and we had to show proof of our vaccination. But coming from, at that point, we were coming from Ontario, and many of the folks from Ontario didn't have any way to prove it. So we had to use really complicated online forms and try to show proof of vaccination. Wouldn't it be easier to have one document at the federal level if we're going to look at federal vaccine passports for traveling internationally, wouldn't it be easier for the federal government to have a document that you could use to prove your vaccination if you were traveling between provinces? So we've been saying that the federal government should deliver that document, make it easy so that it's not so complex and so confusing. And of course, provinces will make their decisions, and that's something within their rights to do so. But I think the federal government can play a strong role in providing a vaccine passport so that people can travel easily. It's just easier, less complex. One document that can be used in multiple provinces.
Thank you, Jagmeet. And speaking of children, I just want to say congratulations to you. He will soon be a father, so this is very exciting. So congratulations to you. All right, next question. Please come right up to the mic.
Hi, I'm Chris Christon, economist from Rice Weekly. And first of all, I want to thank Jenny and Peter and Mike for always support the Chinese community. As we know, Chinatown, Chinese heritage, and the Chinese pioneers did a lot of work for where Chinese pioneers, the building of BC, or also our countries. So thank you, Jenny. Always support of the Chinese community. I saw your platform about the reconciliation. I would say reconciliation, not only on the mouth. Yeah, actions is important. We're ready to better. How to get better? It's nowadays pandemic is some things happen. It's not good. It's bad things, hatred and racism, and also some systematic discrimination. I just learned from my friend. I'm not sure I'm confirmed with Jenny or it's Jagmeet. Is I learned how some bills it has have the first reading in house. Its topic is consent about the Chinese visitors. They should register. For example, we invite some colleges professors and visitors, and they should register because they might belong to the Chinese government agent. Is that true, or what do you think this bills?
Thank you for the question. This particular bill I haven't heard about, but I know that the Conservatives have regularly been the Conservatives have been really creating more and more division, really attacking people for coming from China. And I think some of the words that they're saying and some of the bills they're putting forward and some of the questions that they're asking are really exposing xenophobia, fear of the other. They're increasing fear of people from China or of Chinese descent. And I think that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. They should not be making people the enemy because they come from, because they're of Asian descent or because they come from China. And they seem to have this really strong focus that is increasing that fear. And I'm opposed to that approach. We need to be welcoming. We need to respect the contributions of Asian Canadians, of people of Chinese descent. They literally, as you mentioned, literally are part of building our country, and so should be celebrated. Their contributions should be celebrated, and I'm opposed to that type of discriminatory, divisive, hateful rhetoric that we're seeing in general with anti-Asian hate, but also some of the dog whistles, some of the subtle hints that, maybe not so subtle hints that the Conservatives are putting out that I think are not helpful and are hurtful, in fact, towards building a society where we all work together and live together.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from the media? If you can just come right up to the mic. Todd?
Me again. So, Jimmy, it looks like right now the national poll, you're still the third. I mean, the first two is conservative and liberal. So I knew you were elected for prime minister, but on the other hand, if in the future you have to work with conservative, what's your policy will be? Yeah.
Well, I want folks to know, I think with all the evidence we have that a conservative prime minister will be bad for Canadians. We've seen that people are worried about healthcare. Conservatives have cut healthcare. Aaron O'Toole is a minister in the Harper government that cut transfers to healthcare, making it harder for people to get the care they need. So I don't think, well, I know that a conservative prime minister will be bad for Canadians, but I also think that Justin Trudeau as prime minister has shown that he hasn't made things better, whether it's the housing crisis or the crisis of climate. Whatever we look at, we're seeing that things are actually getting worse. So he hasn't actually made things better for people. So I also don't think we need a prime minister. We can't afford another 4 years of Justin Trudeau. I am running to become Prime Minister because I feel in my heart we can make things better. We can make billionaires pay their fair share. We can invest in people. We can invest in tackling the problems that people are faced with and make life better. I really believe in that, and that's why I'm running for Prime Minister.
Thank you for that, Jagmeet. Any other questions from the media?
Catch another chance, yeah, Ms. Singh.
Sure.
Another two questions from the team. So, as the overdose crisis is getting worse in the province, any comments on that, or how do you address the problem? And maybe the gun violence problem is also getting worse here. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start with the opioid crisis, and it's absolutely getting worse. We've seen recent reports that are outlining the number of deaths that we've seen increasing over the past period of time. This is really worrying. And while a lot of attention, rightly so, has been focused on the pandemic, of course, because we're living that right now, we can't ignore the other crises, and one of those is the opioid crisis. And one of the things that we've seen really clearly is that the past approach and the current approach is just not working. We've got to change our approach. And if the goal is to save lives and to make communities safer, we know that there are better ways to do that. We need to help people who are dealing with addiction, help people who are dealing with mental health, help people who are dealing with poverty. And that help is not putting those folks through the criminal justice system. It just doesn't work. It doesn't make anyone better off. What will work is using our healthcare as a response, and compassion and care and the supports needed to deal with the problems. I want our communities to be safer, and I know that we can't continue to do the same thing and hope for a different result. We've got to take a different approach, and that's what I'm pushing for. And then with the gun violence problem, it's also very concerning. There was a recent incident not too long ago in my own riding in Burnaby. This is a very serious concern. And so it's a complex thing. There's a number of things we've got to do. We've got to tackle, obviously, the availability of guns and find ways to stop the guns from getting over the border, which is one of the bigger concerns. Make sure that the CBSA is well funded to get those guns off the streets. We also need to make sure we're looking at the root causes of violence, and that's a bit more complex, but that involves a lot of the community groups on the ground are saying we need to have better programs for youth, better programs for after school, and invest in solving some of the root causes that lead to the gun violence. So it's a complex problem, but we can deal with it if we make it a priority.
Thank you, Jagmeet. Any other media questions? Yeah, please come on up.
One question. And congratulations, Jim, you have a child. Yes. My question is for our generation or next generation. What can make them better community, better life, especially for climate changes? For example, in BC, this pipeline project and also the forest event. So what's your opinions about the environment?
I really appreciate, thank you. I really appreciate the question. The environment is something that speaks really near and dear to my heart and a lot of people in this room. You've got a room filled with people that care deeply about the environment. And for me, it's something I mentioned, it's something my mom taught me when I was young, our energy, our connection to the planet and around us, and how when we hurt, not just that when people around us are being hurt, it hurts us, but when the planet is being hurt, it also hurts us. So it's something I care deeply about. And so I've seen the approach so far in the past 6 years that Justin Trudeau has missed every single target. He promises to end fossil fuel subsidies, and instead of ending them, has increased fossil fuel subsidies by $900 million a year. That's not going to help us. That's hurting the planet, and that's hurting our goal of protecting the land and the air and the water that we drink. So our plan is to end those fossil fuel subsidies, to take on the big polluters, and to make fighting the climate crisis a priority and fight it like we want to win this fight. And that's what Canadians expect us to do for the next generation. And for right now, we know here in BC, the impact of the climate crisis is that we're seeing these horrible forest fires, more intense and longer and burning hotter than ever before. And we've heard from people that are impacted. We've seen an entire community of Lytton wiped out, and we've seen people that are struggling to breathe the air because of the smoke. So we know it's real and it's hurting us right now. With our forests, I've had the honor and opportunity of being amongst the ancient forests. We need to protect those trees. There's no other way around it. We need to protect them. We need to do more to protect them. And at the federal level, one of the things we've seen is that there needs to be a partner working with Indigenous communities. So our plan is to make sure there's $500 million in federal funding to support Indigenous-led conservation. Indigenous communities have the history and the experience and the teachings and the knowledge around how to be stewards. They need the resources to do it. And if we provide them with the resources, we can protect and conserve the forests.
Thank you, Jagmeet. I think, Todd, you had another question?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have two questions. One, congratulations for new fathers. And I know the national poll also showing that you are very Canadian trust you as the first one. So I knew some young people, they're supporting NDP. But my question is how to push the young people go to the poll station to vote. That's my first one. Second one, nobody talking about the deficit because we're at the age of a very dangerous economy situation right now. It's kind of a $314 billion deficit. How to deal with that?
Thank you. No, these are questions on people's mind. I should start with young people. I believe we've always seen this in history, that young people have always been at the front of social movements. They've been the ones pushing to change things, to make things better. And we saw in the past year and a half, young people were in the climate action, fighting for and demanding for action to protect the planet. They were involved in fighting systemic discrimination and systemic racism. They were at the forefront. So I really believe young people have always shown that they've led, and in this election, they will make history. I believe it. I know it. And I know that everyone, if they want to see a change, if they want to make sure we are tackling the climate crisis, or we're investing in good jobs, or we're creating a better healthcare system that covers you when you need it, to get these things, you have to vote. So I want to send a message to everybody, please vote. Make a plan, make a decision with a friend, and get out and vote. You can vote on using an online application for a mail-in ballot. You can vote in person in advance or in person on the day of. It's easy. You can do this. Please, I want to encourage everyone to vote. And on the question of debt and deficit, I think it's a very, very real question. And the reason why people are worried about it is they think, we've seen this show before. When times are tough, governments do two things. They've seen conservatives and liberals do one of two things. Either they cut the help that people need, or they put the burden back on the same people that have already struggled. Those are the two things they've seen. Higher taxes on workers or cutting the help that they need. We are the only party with a credible plan that says we are not going to do any of those two things. We're not going to cut the help that people need, nor are we going to put the pressure back on the workers, on small businesses, on families. We are the only party with a credible plan to increase revenue so the burden doesn't fall on you and your families. It's going to fall on the billionaires, on companies like Amazon that make record profits in Canada off of Canadians, but pay virtually no tax here. It's the wealthy corporations that use the loopholes in our system to make money in Canada and then hide that money in an offshore tax haven. We're talking about making sure that the super wealthy start paying their fair share. And by doing that with better enforcement, by funding the CRA to do it, we can raise billions of dollars of revenue that we can invest in people. And that's the difference between our plan and the other parties.
Thank you, Jagmeet. We're getting close to our time, so maybe one last question from the media, if there's one last question.
Hello, for Central Daily. Yes, I want to ask the immigration policy in the futures and about the Hong Kong's as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Immigration is something that for a long time has been really confusing, and it's been very difficult for families to bring their loved ones together. And we've seen both the Liberals and Conservatives kind of play a bit of hot potato, one blaming the other. There was the lottery system that was a complete failure. Then there was the cap system, that there's a certain limit of how many people. And, it's interesting, I'm talking about immigration with my both immigration and housing critic who knows this issue really well, so I'm a little nervous here. I'm making sure I get these points right. No, but it's something that really matters to us. So what we're proposing is lifting the cap. Canadian citizens should be able to bring their families here. And we want to make sure that families are brought together. We see this as an asset, as something that is a value add for our communities to have people be able to bring their parents, that contribution is something that is valuable. It's helpful. It's a positive. We look at that as a way of making sure people feel that this is their home, if they can make sure their families can join them. And so we want to support that. We know that's going to require additional resources. Immigration is always understaffed and they're always in a backlog. We don't accept that that has to be the case. We can fix that if we make it, again, something that's important. It is important to us. I know how important it is to be able to bring families together, and we're going to work on that. And then your second question was on Hong Kong. I know that a lot of people that are in Canada have roots in Hong Kong and are seeing what's going on and are really worried. The crackdown on democracy is deeply disturbing and deeply concerning. And so I'm also concerned. I want to see a respect for the promise made that Hong Kong would have a unique status. That was a promise made to the people of Hong Kong, but also to the international community. And I want to see that honored and respected.
Well, thank you very much for that answer, Jagmeet, and for that question. And I just want to say thank you to our leader as well. In my work as the immigration critic, I've always had the full support of our leader in advancing immigration measures to support our community. As he's noted, Canada, we are the faces of the world. I'm an immigrant. Many of us in this room are immigrants. You see the diversity within our platform, within our candidates, with our leader, and that's who we are, and we're proud of that. And so I just want to say thank you to Jagmeet for always supporting me in my work as the critic on immigration, and also in advancing the measures to support the people of Hong Kong. Without hesitancy, he's been there with me every step of the way in pushing the government before the election, in bringing immigration measures, real tangible immigration measures to support the people of Hong Kong. So just great gratitude to Jagmeet, always supporting not just myself, but the entire NDP team. When we step up to fight for issues, as the critic, as the candidate, we have the support of our leader. That's who we are. It is in our DNA as NDPers to advance these issues, to fight for these issues, and to fight for people. So with that, folks, we are coming to an end of our roundtable. I'm going to ask Jagmeet to say a few words to wrap up, and then I'm going to ask our candidates to gather together so that we can take a group picture.
Great idea. Great idea. Well, again, I want to thank you, and I feel like it's very important to me that we have these opportunities to connect directly with different media outlets, and particularly with media that's Cantonese and Mandarin background. It's so important. I want to be able to be available to you, to have opportunities to connect with you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. I want to say I couldn't do these type of events without the help of Jenny. She's been, I think, at every single one of our media roundtables and is incredibly helpful, not just as our immigration critic, fighting for housing. She is just a great ally and someone I'm really honored to call a friend, and someone who has been a great fighter for people, and just so thankful to have you on the team, Jenny. It means a lot. Thank you again, and you can count on us. Really, at the end of the day, I want you to know when times are tough, we were there for you. In the recovery, you can count on us to be there for you again. We have one priority, and that's you. That's people. And everything we do has that in our mind, and that's why we fought to get the help that we were able to obtain for people. And that's why in this recovery, we don't want the burden to fall on you and your families. We want to make the super wealthy start paying their fair share so we can invest in supporting you and lifting you up and giving people the help that they need. Thank you so much.